My hands felt clammy as I navigated the tight airplane aisle, my son Leo's small hand clutching mine. The strap of our shared duffel bag, containing everything we owned, cut into my shoulder. The filtered cabin air tasted stale, a mixture of cleaning solution and the expensive perfume of people whose lives were nothing like mine. I'd never been on a plane before. In 25 years of foster homes and then scraping by at a Chicago diner, air travel had been an impossible fantasy. "Sorry, excuse us," I mumbled, trying to guide 4-year-old Leo past a businessman who glared at his briefcase as if we might contaminate it. It was a familiar feeling, being treated like an inconvenience, a piece of scenery. I was the waitress whose name you never learned, the single mom you judged in the grocery line. The ticket in my hand was our lifeline, a one-way flight to Denver where my oldest friend Anya had a pull-out couch and a lead on a waitressing job for me. It was a chance to get away from the city, from the collection notices, and from Marco, the diner manager whose suggestions had become demands and whose touch had started to linger. I looked at our boarding pass again, the ink slightly blurred from my nervous grip. Seat 12B. I scanned the rows, my tired mind transposing the numbers as I moved toward the front of the plane. The lighting seemed softer here, the seats wider, with generous legroom that looked like heaven. "This must be it, sweetie," I whispered, helping Leo into the window seat before sliding in beside him. The fabric was plush, a world away from the cracked vinyl of our apartment's hand-me-down sofa. I let myself savor the small, illicit luxury. The flight had cost nearly everything I had, but for this one moment, maybe we deserved a little comfort. A flight attendant with a polished smile that didn't quite warm her eyes walked by, her gaze lingering on my worn jeans and Leo's slightly too small jacket. I felt a familiar flush of shame, certain she could sense our desperation. I expected her to stop, to question us, but she continued on her way. I let out a slow breath, turning Leo's attention to the small screen on the seat back in front of him. His eyes widened at the array of cartoons, a universe of entertainment beyond the ancient tablet we shared. Glimpses. A strong hand adorned with a heavy silver ring, shoulders that filled the aisle, dark hair styled with effortless precision. I risked a quick glance upward, and my breath caught. His face was a study in sharp, handsome angles, high cheekbones, a jawline shadowed with stubble, and eyes of a startling, icy gray. He was perhaps in his mid-30s, yet he moved with an aura of absolute authority. He was flanked by 2 other men in similar suits, their gazes sweeping the cabin with a practiced, watchful cadence. The man stopped at the row directly behind us. I could feel his presence like a physical weight, and I caught the scent of expensive leather and something else, something clean and sharp like gin. I realized then that power had its own fragrance, one I'd never been close enough to smell before. "Mr. Volkov, may I bring you something before we depart?" The flight attendant who had eyed me with suspicion was now a picture of solicitous charm, her smile suddenly genuine. "Just water, no ice," he replied. His voice was a low baritone, laced with a faint Eastern European accent. It was the voice of a man who never had to raise it to be obeyed. I tensed, the mistake I'd made crashing down on me. This was premium economy, or something even better. I belonged in the back with everyone else. Panic tightened its grip on my chest, but I remained frozen, praying that if I stayed perfectly still, I could feign ignorance until we were in the air. Then I could explain my error quietly. The cabin door closed. I pulled out our boarding pass one last time, my heart sinking as I finally saw it clearly. Seat 21B, not 12B. A rookie error, born of exhaustion and stress. My cheeks burned. I would have to gather Leo, our bag, and perform the walk of shame past this intimidating man and his entourage. Just as I began to move, the polished flight attendant was at my side. "Excuse me, ma'am." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes were cold. "Could I see your boarding pass?" My mouth went dry. "Sir." A slight frown creased his brow as he glanced at the pass in her hand. I became aware of his men seated nearby, all watching the interaction with unnerving stillness. "And who is assigned to these seats?" he asked, nodding toward where Leo and I sat. The attendant consulted her tablet. "They are currently unassigned, sir. The flight is not completely full in this cabin." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of decision. "They stay." The attendant blinked, confused. "Sir?" "They stay here," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Then, speaking directly to me, his voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Stay. You and your boy are not moving." It was an order, delivered with the serene confidence of a king. The command settled over me, both terrifying and, strangely, a relief. The flight attendant's smile became rigid. "Of course, Mr. Volkov, as you wish." She returned my boarding pass and retreated. I clutched the paper, my heart pounding. Why would a complete stranger do that? I wanted to turn and thank him, to ask him why, but the sheer force of his presence kept me facing forward. The plane began its taxi, and I stared out the window, watching the ground crew shrink as we moved toward the runway. Behind me, I heard the murmur of his voice speaking in low tones to one of his men. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was talking about us. "First time flying for him?" The question, spoken softly near my ear, made me jump. I turned to see Mr. Volkov leaning forward again, his forearms on the back of the seat in front of him. He'd taken off his suit jacket, and a crisp white shirt stretched across his broad shoulders. A heavy, intricate watch on his wrist was probably worth more than my car. "For both of us," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. Collided, a corner of his mouth lifted in a hint of a smile. "You are holding on to that armrest like it might fly away without you." I looked down at my white-knuckled hand and forced my fingers to relax. "Yes, first time." The plane reached the runway, the engines whining as they spooled up. Mr. Volkov remained where he was, his gray eyes studying my face. Fell away. The feeling was both terrifying and magical. When we reached cruising altitude, I risked another look at him. He was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Not with fear, but with a heightened awareness. It felt like being seen for the first time. "Thank you," I said, finally addressing his intervention, "for letting us stay here. It was an honest mistake." "I know," he said with absolute conviction. "How could you know that?" He leaned back, though his gaze never wavered. "People who try to cheat the system are arrogant. You look like you were about to apologize for breathing the air." A startled laugh escaped me. "Is that what I look like?" "That, and like you were ready to run the moment you were noticed." The flight attendant appeared with a drink cart. "Complimentary beverages for our premium guests," she announced, her smile now including me. She offered me a glass of champagne with a deference that was clearly for Dima's benefit, not mine. I took it, acutely aware of his eyes tracking the movement. As my fingers closed around the stem, my sleeve rode up, revealing the faint, discolored marks of a fading bruise on my forearm. A parting gift from Marco when I'd told him I was quitting. Dima saw it. His expression didn't change, but a cold stillness settled in his eyes. "Enjoy the champagne, Lena. It is very good." He accepted a glass from the attendant without looking at her, his focus remaining on my arm, which I quickly covered. I took a sip. The bubbles tasted of wealth and a life I couldn't imagine. "It's nice," I said, feeling foolishly inadequate. "It should be," he said casually. "It is $200 a bottle." I nearly choked. $200. That was a week's worth of childcare. I took another sip, trying to commit the taste to memory. "Denver," he said, gesturing toward my boarding pass. "A new beginning?" The question was so perceptive it unnerved me. I stared at the golden liquid in my glass. Something like that. "Are you running toward something or away from it?" "Both." Open inside me. The weight of working double shifts, of packing our lives into a single bag, of lying awake at night, listening for Marco's car, of wondering if I was a fool for even trying to escape. It all washed over me. "Neighbor." "Thank you," I said again. And this time, it was for more than just the seat or the champagne. Dima leaned back, studying me with those unreadable gray eyes. One of his men approached and whispered something to him. Dima gave a single, sharp nod and dismissed him. "Get some rest, Lena," he said, his voice a soft command. "You and the boy. It is a long way to the mountains." I turned back to the window, watching the clouds drift below, but I was intensely aware of him behind me. A force of gravity I couldn't explain. I didn't know who Dmitry Volkov was, or why he had shown me this kindness. All I knew was that after years of feeling invisible, someone had finally seen me. And despite every warning bell screaming in my head, a small, treacherous part of me never wanted to be invisible again. I closed my eyes, lulled by the hum of the engines and the heavy weight of a powerful stranger's gaze. I must have drifted off, the champagne and the steady drone of the plane creating a cocoon of calm. When I woke, the cabin was dark and a soft blanket was tucked around me and Leo, who was sleeping soundly, his head on my lap. I didn't remember asking for it. I shifted, my memory foggy, before the strange events of the flight returned in a rush. Slowly, I glanced over my shoulder. Dima was awake, the cool light of a tablet illuminating the sharp planes of his face. He looked up as if he'd felt my gaze, his eyes meeting mine in the dim cabin. A silent current passed between us. A shared awareness that felt both intimate and unsettling. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "How long were we out?" "A few hours," he set the tablet aside. "You looked as if you needed it." 3 hours of unguarded sleep in the presence of this man and his silent guards. I didn't smile at my deflection. Instead, he leaned forward, shortening the distance between our seats. "I think it is because you have taught yourself not to expect it. It is a difficult way to live." His perception was unnerving. I turned to look out the window at the vast, dark emptiness. "You don't know anything about me." "I know more than you imagine." His tone made me look back. He held up his phone. On the screen was my own social media page, the one I rarely updated, with its handful of public photos of me and Leo, my work history at the diner, and the online community college courses I'd started before Leo was born. "What are you doing?" I hissed, my anger momentarily eclipsing my fear. "You were looking me up while I was sleeping?" He seemed completely unbothered. I make it a habit to understand who I am dealing with. We're not dealing with anything. You're a stranger on my flight. A stalker, apparently. A dangerous glint appeared in his eyes, a warning I was too incensed to properly heed. "Be careful, Lena," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "There is a difference between being cautious and being disrespectful. I will permit one, but not the other." The veiled threat, delivered with such calm certainty, extinguished my anger like a splash of cold water. I was suddenly aware of our isolation, miles above the earth, surrounded by his men, with nowhere to run. "I'm sorry," I said stiffly. I'm just not used to this level of scrutiny. He watched me for a long moment, then gave a slight nod, accepting the apology without offering one in return. Tell me about Denver. You are meeting a friend? The change of topic was jarring. My friend Anya, we were in the same group home for a few years. She moved west, got herself established. She's letting me and Leo stay with her until I can get on my feet. And you have work? Anya thinks the cafe where she works is hiring. It's near downtown. It's a start. A waitress, he stated, his voice flat. I felt a sting of judgment. It's on served gray meatloaf from a frozen tray. Any recommendations? Dima asked, seeing my hesitation. I've never had any of this, I confessed. A flicker of something, displeasure maybe, crossed his face. Never? I shrugged, trying to hide my embarrassment. Group homes aren't known for their five-star cuisine, and diner waitresses don't eat at places that serve duck confit. For a second, I saw real anger in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined it. The salmon, he said decisively, and the chocolate lava cake for dessert. When the attendant returned, I ordered as he'd suggested. After she left, I looked at him curiously. Is the wine very special? It is a 2005 Cheval Blanc, about $2,000 a bottle. I choked on my water. For wine, on an airplane. A faint smile touched his lips. I have particular tastes. The meal was a revelation. The salmon was cooked perfectly, flaking at the touch of my fork. Dima insisted I try a piece of his steak, cutting it and placing it on my plate with a casual grace that spoke of a lifetime of fine dining. He poured wine for both of us, watching with an unnerving focus as I took my first sip. What do you think? He asked. I tried to find the right words. It's smooth. It tastes like dark fruit and something else like smoke or tobacco. He looked genuinely impressed. You have a good palate. Most people would not notice that on a first taste. The compliment warmed me more than it should have. We ate in a comfortable silence, the rich food and wine creating a bubble of impossible luxury high above the darkened plains of the Midwest. Tell me about Chicago, he said after a while. What were you running from? My appetite vanished. I told you, a fresh start. And I told you that I know more than you imagine. His eyes dropped to my forearm, where the bruise was hidden beneath my sleeve. Who was he? The question was so direct, so certain, that denial felt pointless. My manager at the diner, Marco, he got the wrong idea. What he was implying. Instead, a dark, shameful knot of satisfaction untangled in my stomach. Marco Rossi, the Lakeview Skillet on North Broadway. Dima nodded once, typed something into his phone, and then set it aside. I didn't ask what he had done. I knew it was better not to know. Dessert arrived, and he watched me take my first bite of the rich chocolate cake, his gaze so intense, it felt like a physical touch. Good? He asked, his voice a low rumble. I could only nod, a small sound of pleasure escaping me. His eyes darkened in response. You should allow yourself more pleasure, Lena Petrova, he said quietly. It looks good on you. The air between us crackled with a tension I was too inexperienced to name, but old enough to recognize. It was a volatile mix of danger and desire. I forced my attention back to my dessert, my heart hammering. When I looked up again, Dima was watching me with the unnerving patience of a wolf. What do you do? I asked, desperate for safer ground. For work. I am in logistics, high-value assets, primarily between Eastern Europe and the Americas. That sounds vague. He smiled then, a true smile that briefly transformed his harsh features into something devastatingly handsome. It is meant to be. Are you always this mysterious, or am I just special? The words were out before I could stop them, too bold and flirtatious for my own good. His smile deepened. You are special, Lena. More than you know. Before I could process that, one of his men appeared, leaning down to whisper in his ear. Dima's expression changed instantly, the warmth vanishing, replaced by cold command. He nodded, then turned back to me. Excuse me. He rose and moved to the front of the cabin with his associate, their heads bent in a tense, quiet conference. I used the opportunity to take Leo to the lavatory. Inside, I looked at my reflection. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright. What are you doing? I whispered to the woman in the mirror. For the boy when he wakes up, he said, handing it to me. It has games and movies, and for you, he navigated to an audiobook app. If you cannot sleep, you can at least listen. It might quiet your thoughts. I took the tablet, our fingers brushing. You keep audiobooks on your work tablet? Dostoevsky is good for long flights. It puts my own complications in perspective. The gesture felt surprisingly intimate. Does this make you uncomfortable? He asked, his eyes holding mine in the dim light. Everything about this should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, I felt drawn further into his orbit. No, I admitted, it doesn't. He nodded, as if my answer confirmed something he already knew. Good. Listen, Lena, I enjoy watching your face when you think. It should have sounded predatory. Instead, it made me feel seen. I put in the earbuds, aware of his gaze on me as I started the book. But I couldn't concentrate, my mind consumed by the magnetic, dangerous man behind me. Who was Dmitry Volkov? What kind of logistics required armed guards? And why had he taken such an interest in me and my son, a waitress with nothing to offer him? Most importantly, what would happen when the plane landed and this surreal bubble of first-class protection popped? I must have listened for an hour, my mind racing, before I felt a light tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Dima leaning forward, his face so close I could see the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw. Your mind is very loud, he said softly. I can almost hear it from here. I took out my earbuds. Sorry. Do not apologize. Tell me what is wrong. I hesitated, then chose the truth. This. I don't understand why you're being so kind to us. Men like you don't even notice people like me. Men like me? His voice had a dangerous edge. Powerful, I swallowed. Rich? Dangerous? He smiled, a chilling, predatory smile that held no warmth. And people like you? Invisible, I said simply. Felt. The sense that my life had just taken a sharp, perilous turn off its predictable course. Maybe I'm the one who's crazy, I whispered. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing our descent into Denver. The spell was broken. The cabin lights came up and the world rushed back in. Thank you for the audiobook, I said, handing back the tablet. Keep it, he said. A gift. Something for Leo to use. The plane began its descent, and the lights of Denver appeared below us, a glittering carpet spread against the dark plains, with the even darker silhouette of the mountains rising beyond. A new city. A new start. But the future I'd been so desperate for now felt pale compared to the intensity of this present moment. What happens when we land? I asked, the question finally escaping. Dima's expression was unreadable. That, Lena, is up to you. Up to me? How? He leaned closer, his voice a low murmur only I could hear. When we deplane, you have a choice. You can go to baggage claim, meet your friend Anya, and start your new life in a cafe downtown. He paused, his gray eyes locking with mine. Or, you and Leo can come with me. My heart skipped a beat. Come with you where? Does it matter? It should have. It should have been the only thing that mattered. Instead, I found myself actually considering it, walking away from the safe plan and into the unknown with this man. You don't know me, I whispered. I know enough. The rest we will have time to learn. The plane touched down with a screech of tires. Reality returned with a jolt. Anya waiting, the job, the sensible future. I can't just— You can, Dima interrupted. That is the point, Lena. You can do exactly as you wish. For once, you have a real choice. The plane taxied to the gate. Every second brought me closer to a decision that felt impossibly large. Why us? I asked, my voice small. Why me and my son? Dima looked at me, and then his gaze softened as he glanced at Leo, who was just starting to stir. He pulled a thick business card from an inner pocket and handed it to me. My private number, he said. For you. Whatever you decide. The card was heavy, embossed with only his name and a number. No company, no title. Just Dmitry Volkov. He paused in the aisle beside me. I will wait for you outside the secure area. For 20 minutes. After that, I will know your choice. And then he was gone, moving down the aisle with an easy confidence that parted the crowd before him. I sat frozen, my fingers tracing the edges of the card, my heart hammering. 20 minutes to decide the future for myself and my son. I gently woke Leo, my hands trembling slightly. I gathered our backpack and the duffel bag, the weight of our entire lives feeling both heavy and insignificant. As I walked off the plane, the flight attendants who had once looked through me now smiled and wished me a pleasant stay in Denver. The terminal was a shock of noise and light after the quiet cocoon of the plane. I followed the signs for baggage claim, each step a battle. Anya was down there. Safety, predictability. A hard life, but a known one. A life where I was in control, even if that control only extended to which bills I could pay this month. Then there was Dima. Danger. Power. A life where Leo would want for nothing. A life where I might be protected, but would never truly be free, or safe from the world he inhabited. I stopped in the middle of the concourse, people flowing around me. What kind of mother would even consider this? Taking her child from one precarious situation and willingly walking into another, infinitely more dangerous one. My phone vibrated. A text from Anya. Just got to baggage claim 3. Can't wait to see you guys. Guilt twisted in my gut. She was a good friend, my only real family. And I was thinking of betraying her trust for a man I'd known for only a few hours. A man who was almost certainly a criminal. I started walking again, toward the escalators leading down to baggage claim. The exit from the secure area. And there he was, standing apart from the waiting crowd, his men forming a discreet perimeter. He was on his phone, his expression severe. Before I could lose my nerve, his head came up, his gray eyes scanning the crowd. He saw me, and for a second, surprise flickered across his face, followed by a deep, quiet satisfaction. He ended his call and waited, giving me the space to close the final distance. I walked toward him, each step feeling like a leap into a vast, dark unknown. "You are here," he said, his voice a calm statement of fact. "We're here," I corrected, holding Leo's hand a little tighter. "And your friend?" I swallowed hard. I texted her. I told her something came up with Leo, that I'd call her in the morning. It was a lie, a coward's excuse. Anya deserved better. Dima nodded, making no comment. "Are you certain, Lena? This is not a choice you can easily undo." The seriousness in his voice should have sent me running. Instead, it grounded me. "I'm not certain of anything," I admitted, "except that I would regret walking away." A flicker of approval lit his eyes. He extended his hand. I hesitated for only a heartbeat before placing mine in his. His fingers closed around my hand, warm and strong. "Come," he said. "The car is waiting." He led us through the terminal, his men moving around us like shadows. Outside, the cool, dry Colorado air was a shock to my lungs. A black SUV idled at the curb, a driver holding the rear door open. Another identical SUV waited behind it. Dima helped Leo into a car seat that was already installed, then guided me in after him, his hand a firm, proprietary weight on the small of my back. He slid in beside me. "Where are we going?" I asked as the car pulled silently away from the curb. "To my home," Dima replied, "unless you would prefer a hotel." Neighboring the assumption that there would be a home sent a shiver down my spine. "Your home is fine." He studied me in the intermittent knowable. "So, what happens to me and Leo now?" His expression grew serious. "That part of my life will not touch you. You are separate. But your men, the security, that will always be there, won't it?" "Yes," he said, without apology. "My position requires it." The SUV turned off the highway, climbing a winding road into the foothills. Through the window, I could see the lights of Denver spread out below. "Is this where you give me a list of rules?" I asked, half joking. Dima's gaze was intense. "You are not my property, Lena. I do not want to control you. I want to give you and your son a life you have never had." In exchange for what? His hand found mine in the darkness, his fingers lacing with mine. "Your loyalty, your honesty, your company." Ty sounded too simple. There has to be more. He was quiet for a moment. "When I saw you on that plane, trying to be invisible while fiercely protecting your son, I recognized it. Not myself now, but the boy I was when my father first brought me from Moscow. I spoke no English. I was an outsider. I learned to make myself small to avoid trouble. The confession stunned me. I couldn't imagine this powerful man ever feeling small. "My father taught me that a Volkov bows to no one," he continued, his eyes finding mine. "And now, you are with me. You and Leo will never have to make yourselves small again." His words struck a deep, lonely chord inside me. The car passed through an imposing gate and up a long drive to a stunning modern house of glass and stone, perched on the mountainside like an eagle's nest. "This is your home?" I breathed. "Ours," he corrected. "For as long as you wish to stay." The car stopped. Before the driver could move, Dima turned to me, his expression grave. "One more thing, Lena. My world is dangerous. There are men who would see your presence here as a weakness to exploit. If you stay, you accept that risk, and the protection that comes with it." It was my final chance to back out. I thought of Anya, of the diner, of the constant struggle. Then I looked at Dima's arms with practiced ease. "I will get the little one settled in bed." As Irina disappeared down a hallway, I stared at the cavernous foyer, with its soaring ceilings and views of the city lights through a wall of glass. "This is insane," I whispered. Dima came to stand beside me. It is a lot to take in. He took my hand. Come, you are exhausted. Tomorrow we will talk. Tonight you rest. He led me to a suite that was larger than my entire Chicago apartment. Through an open door, I could see a smaller room, already furnished for a child. On the bed, Leo was tucked in under a soft blue comforter, fast asleep. I stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed. Just that morning, I'd been a desperate single mother fleeing with her child. Now, I was here. This is crazy, I said again. Dima moved closer, his presence a warm, solid anchor. I will not pretend to understand what this is like for you, he said, his honesty disarming me. All I can do is promise to keep you and your son safe. What am I to you, Dima? I asked, needing to know. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. My guest, he said, for now. What comes next, we will discover together. He leaned down and pressed a soft, chaste kiss to my forehead. Sleep well, Lena Petrova. Tomorrow, your new life begins. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I walked over to the small bedroom and watched my son sleeping peacefully, safe and warm in a way I could never have provided. I had made a deal with a devil, perhaps, but tonight, this gilded cage felt remarkably like a sanctuary. Whatever came next, whatever dangers awaited, I knew with a terrifying certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be.